The weed business takes no time at all to come into full bloom in Michigan. Has it really become the top weed market in the country? And on this Labor Day, as the UAW plays hardball with the big three, what is the future of labor in America? Today is Sunday, September 3rd, 2023, and this is Flashpoint. Hi, welcome to Flashpoint. Good to have you with us on this Labor Day weekend. And my goodness, the labor movement has arrived at a few critical moments just now. From the writers and actors striking in Hollywood to the UAW workers who overwhelmingly voted to authorize a strike, if it comes to that, in the negotiations with the big three. If you're a frequent viewer of this broadcast, you already know the stakes. You're well acquainted with the outlook of the UAW President Shawn Fain, who seems more than ready for a fight. We're now about 2 weeks away from the deadline for a deal, and so we watch and wait. As for this morning, we're going to talk about Governor Whitmer's plans for the fall. Pretty critical time frame for her, given the possibility that November could usher in the end of the Democratic majority in Lansing. We'll also talk a bit about this very strange email that has surfaced, one from a consultant to the governor's energy advisor, alerting her to the seriousness of a lead problem in Benton Harbor. But the memo used Greek letters, apparently to avoid disclosure in public records reporting. We'll talk about that too. But up first, I was a little surprised recently to find that on a per capita basis, Michigan is now the top marijuana market in the country. That followed a series of other weedy headlines, like worries over the fact that even as marijuana keeps getting stronger and stronger, it remains a very unregulated business. And what about medical marijuana? Is that really a thing in a state that legalizes it for recreational purposes? All that and more today on Flashpoint. You know, in almost half the country, adult use marijuana is legal, and yet somehow Michigan has moved to the top as the strongest per capita weed market in the country. The ramifications are many. Let's talk about it with Dustin Walsh, senior reporter for Crain's Detroit Business. Anquinette Sarfo is back with us, longtime advocate for medical marijuana and the founder of Culture. Rob Sims is the former Detroit Lion, now partnering with his former teammate, Calvin Johnson, in the Primitive Group. And our medical doctor on staff, Dr. Frank McGeorge, is here to talk about the fact that this is still a very unregulated business. Dustin, I'm going to start with you because It was your story that alerted me that this is where we were.
Yeah. Per
capita, the strongest market in the whole country now.
Yeah, so if you look at where we're at, we're about $143 per person, that's man, woman, and child, in the state of Michigan. And then through June, so first 6 months of the year.
Yeah.
But if we look at California and Colorado, who are the other two strongest markets, we're bigger than them. There's some reasons for that. The argument is that Michigan propped up its industry very fast. We're an unlimited licensure state, so we got off the ground really, really quickly.
Put more people into business.
Right,
yeah.
And because of that, prices tanked. And so marijuana in the state is very cheap. And so that's drawing people from the illicit market into the legal market. They say about 75% of all sales in Michigan are done in the legal market, where if we look at California, which has 30 million more people than us, they're only about 44% in the legal market. So they have a long way to go and certainly will surpass us. But right now, we're sort of king.
Rob, give me your take then on where this business is. Obviously, it's grown, but Dustin's also talked about the price pressures that's happening. What does the health of the business feel like to you as someone who's in it?
Yeah, I think the last few years through COVID and then through there being unlimited licensure and there being so many operators, so many cultivators in there. Yeah, definitely the price tanked and there was a little bit of a storm for a lot of us operators. But I still feel like we're starting to come out of that storm a little bit. I feel like prices have kind of came back up very slightly, but I think ultimately we're headed in the right direction. So I feel like we kind of weathered the storm. For the guys that are still around, there's a chance to still do some great things.
Does it feel like it's an elastic business? Does price really matter? I mean, are people who are dedicated to being customers, they're going to stay in it no matter what it costs them at a certain point, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is like any other business or anything. You look for the cheapest price, right? This is about who has the best deals, right? Who has the best marketing, right? The best customer service. All those things, play a factor, but, deals definitely reign supreme there.
Yeah. Anquinette, one of Dustin's other headlines that caught my attention was one that basically said medical marijuana is dead. in a state where it's so easy to just go in and buy. Why do I even, want to mess with getting a medical marijuana license? What's your take on, because obviously as you've been very upfront about your battle with MS and how this has helped you, but where do you think the medical side of this is now?
That was always the intent. There's no such thing really as medical cannabis versus adult use cannabis. It's all cannabis. If you use an apple to help with your blood pressure, is it a medical apple? It's not. It's not. And so what you're finding is that you're seeing people like myself who've decided to no longer get a med card, mainly because you give up your rights when you get a med card. Especially you give up your rights to carry a weapon once you have a med card. So you have a lot of people who've decided to no longer get med cards. The product is the same, and so you have a lot of people using it for medicinal reasons, but they are utilizing recreational or adult use stores. And that was always the goal.
Well then, Dr. Frank George, what that means then is that we have a lot of people basically medicating in a very unregulated, because another article from this past week talked about how much stronger, this is not your father or your grandfather's weed, it is so much stronger than it used to be, and yet there's really no, you feel the same way about the supplement market, I should note, there's no regulation around this.
Well, marijuana, of course, has changed. It's been cultivated to be much stronger, more potent, and I think consumers need to be aware of that and regulate their own use based on what the concentration of THC and or CBD might be in the product that they're using. But I think one of the main things about marijuana that's really interesting to me related to the regulation issue is regulation needs to be based on science. And the research that has gone into marijuana so far is vanishingly small, and that's largely because of strong federal regulations against research in marijuana because it is currently a Schedule I drug, meaning it has, according to the federal government, no medical purpose. That would be a Schedule I drug with a high risk for addiction. Proposed is a reduction to a Schedule III drug, which would change some of the financing around marijuana, but it will also change the ability to do research.
Well, now there was a proposal to step it down in the substance world, but Rob, the fact that the federal government is still finds it, has it illegal, it causes so many ripple effects. People can't use a credit card. You were just mentioning, in fact, I'll get to your bank problem here in just a minute, but how much of an impediment is this to business for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's all an impediment. When we can't, from 280E standpoint, there's certain things we can't deduct, right, as a business owner, right? So you've got that. Like you said, our company wants to focus on research and bringing performance products to the market. When we're not able to go ahead and research that and find dollars to go research that, that's a struggle. And simple things like a credit card, now everybody has to go get cash. The list is endless on the things that we're held up on doing and just being normal business owners, and all things that we have to be nimble and figure out, ways around.
Your bank problem, explain that a little bit. You're on your third bank.
Right. Even though I don't have a business that touches a plant, I own a CBD company. However, my CBD bank has decided to kick me out. Before that, we lost 2 bank accounts. We were in the cannabis industry at that point, but I lost my personal accounts with to a credit union and a major bank. And now this third bank that has kicked me out is also it's a major bank as well. So, but that's I'm lucky, because there are people who have been in the industry longer than I have, and they've been kicked out of 12 banks and 15 banks, and so this is par for the course. And I do want to push back slightly on what the good doctor said. There are actually 25,000 studies on cannabis. They're just not in the U.S. So there are 25,000 studies. A lot of those studies are done by Spain and Israel, but we use those studies to make qualifying conditions here in Michigan. So the research is there, and we would love to have more doctors know about that.
But no studies here because, to his
Very
point,
few.
because of
Correct. Yes.
You wanted to say.
Well, I was just going to point out that the banking issue is more than just owners of companies. It also goes down to the employees of these companies. There are plenty of employees. I've talked to them. We'll be releasing an article soon about their experiences of not being able to get loans, being kicked out of banks, not being able to get mortgages because only Freddie Mac doesn't, Fannie Mae does, or vice versa. There's a lot of hurdles to just being in the business, even if you're just a lowly worker opposed to an owner.
Yeah. Doc, I don't want to do the 2023 version of Reefer Madness here, but let's go back to this, to the strength of the marijuana and whether or not you're seeing more people in the ER especially young people
Yeah.
coming in with marijuana problems or that have gotten a little extreme?
Well, so the interesting thing to that is what we're seeing more in the emergency department are accidental ingestions, because there's more product out there. And more product out there being used recreationally just means there's more available to be accidentally ingested by someone who didn't intend to. And most of those that we are concerned about are pediatric ingestions. Adults, we do see a large number of adults who are trying marijuana for the first time and frankly underestimate its potency or do not know what effect it is going to have on them, and they are surprised to find out that it does in fact have sometimes a profound effect on them. So, you know, it's not uncommon for us to see patients that come in with heart racing, with hallucinations, with, you know, feelings of doom, anxiety, whatnot. Not everybody has those feelings, clearly. Everybody is an individual. But for the people that do experience them and it's their first time and they're not anticipating it, that brings them to the ER.
Rob, I think we had gotten to a point where a lot of Americans thought, look, it's just marijuana. This has been around for a long time, and that is kind of what helped lead to its legalization. But should we be worried that this isn't quite the same old marijuana? It's sometimes 10 times more powerful when it comes to THC than it used to be, sometimes more than that.
Yeah, I mean, I think as business owners, we're always fighting for that next big product and what keeps us competitive, right? But I think people also has to have the responsibility to know, hey, I've got to lock my stuff up when I'm at home, right? If I have young children, I have young children, and we, you know, make sure that stuff is put away. And also, you know, there's all kind of different things. You know, you can infuse pre-rolls and pre-rolls with all kind of different things in them. You know, I tend to like the more natural things. So, yeah, for some people, yeah, you need to be careful.
Would you welcome more regulation?
I would welcome more regulation. You know, I mean, you know, set rules always evens the playing field, and I'm willing to compete with anybody. So, you know, more regulation does help.
How do you feel about more regulation and a little bit more oversight from, say, the FDA?
It depends on the regulation, and what concerns me as an owner of a CBD company in particular is that once we get the FDA involved, okay, does that mean you're going to now make sure that all of these small holistic operators such as myself are out of business and everything now is just pharmaceutical grade and only certain companies are allowed to develop these products? My products are tested. We have a regulatory structure in place. They're licensed products. I have a license. I don't know how much more regulation is needed, and because I'm always concerned that once regulators start messing with laws, then that's when we're going to see increased taxes. We're going to see other things.
You wouldn't argue for less regulation, though, in the pharmaceutical industry, I'll bet.
Well, I'm a person who I feel that the overuse of pharmaceuticals has led to massive health care challenges in our country. And so I'm concerned about the
Dr. McGeorge would disagree with you on that.
I'm concerned about the overuse of pharmaceuticals in our country, in our society.
Fair?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a potential real thing. You know, bigger picture, though, to me, without, again, a better understanding of the effects, the quantities, and whether that brings regulation or just understanding. Without that understanding, I think individuals are left to basically fend for themselves.
And we're going to see more regulation on the state side because the state is opening its own testing lab. So right now, the way the testing is done is these test labs submit their methodology and the state accepts it. We don't know. There's no necessarily standardization there. And so this new test lab is going to set the standard. They hope nationally, but is going to set the standard in the state. And I think we're going to see those THC numbers come down.
And lastly, though, Dustin, I think a lot of people are still surprised to find that there is still a thriving, not legal marijuana trade.
Sure. Yeah.
You'd think you would chase that out. Not so.
No, I mean, the cheap prices help, but, you know, sometimes people are more comfortable going to bob their local dealer down the street than trying to find a dispensary. It just depends on availability and everything else.
Fascinating conversation, friends. Thank you all very much for being here. Really appreciate it. We come back, we will talk about the future of labor in America as we head toward Labor Day tomorrow. This is Flashpoint on Local 4. Welcome back. Tomorrow is the annual Labor Day walk across the Mackinac Bridge, led by Governor Whitmer. So let's talk about Labor Day and about the governor. Nolan Finley is the editorial page director of the Detroit News, and Adam Ollier is the director of the Michigan Veteran Affairs Agency. Thank you both for being here.
Love it.
I'm curious, this is a really interesting backdrop for Labor Day, isn't it? We're watching this strike that has crippled the entertainment industry out west, and now we're watching loggerheads between the UAW and the Big Three. How do you feel like the future of labor looks right now in our very high-tech, speedy world?
I think labor is doing the right things to stay relevant and to take care of workers, right? I'm a member of a union. I teach at Wayne State, and I was a graduate student instructor and my union steward when I was at the University of Michigan. I was excited to see them get a contract, right? Like, I have little kids at DPS, and their contract was just approved. We're talking about folks who are making sure that we're going to have paid time off, that we're going to have good working conditions, the kind of things that are going to make sure that jobs stay here in Michigan and people can do them, right? There's a reason that our participation rate isn't as great as we'd like it to be, and organized labor is doing everything they can to make sure that we get there.
Are you as upbeat on labor, Nolan?
Well, would you be surprised if I were?
I would be surprised if you were.
But I think we're headed into a critical moment in terms of which way the labor movement's going to go. On September 14th, Shawn Fain walks that UAW off the job, either a broad strike or a narrow strike against one company.
That was not a narrow strike authorization vote.
No, and,
overwhelming.
And I think that will be a real test because walking somebody off a job is easier than getting them back on. And if he has pretty much talked himself into the position that he has to take them out. There's no contract he can accept. Much less than his extraordinary demands that will satisfy the workers he's sort of raised expectations for.
Are you worried about where this feels like it's headed, Adam?
I think UAW went on a strike before, and it was better for workers. The unemployment rate is at a 20-year low here in Michigan at 3.6%, and every employer is saying that they're looking for good talent. And labor unions are saying, hey, if you want good talent, these are the things that you need to do. Come to the table and negotiate. And I'm hopeful.
Is a 32, I mean, obviously you throw out a lot of things that you end up drawing back, but a 32-hour work week, worries about AI, which are very real and legitimate for everybody right now. I mean, are these everyday issues that most Americans can relate to?
When the UAW started pushing for the 40-hour work week, people would say that it was absolutely insane and crazy. And so is a 32-hour work week the answer? I don't know. But when we're talking about the impact of childcare, when we're talking about efficiency and all those other kind of things, I think it's reasonable for labor to be saying, hey, we think this is the right mix.
Also, the target of Shawn Fain's ire is the most profitable right now, is the most profitable automaker in the world.
Yeah, and of course he's got personal issues with Stellantis, and that's always dangerous in labor negotiations when you're personally invested in grievances with the company you're bargaining with. He's put a lot of things on the table, like the 32-hour work week and like the 46% raise that the companies can't meet. And if I were these three companies on September 14th, I would be putting out a very good offer and making it very public so the members know what they're walking away from when they walk out the jobs.
Public nature
and that's
of
what
this
GM did
so
4 years ago.
That's true. It's interesting. Some of the rest of the world is going to shorter work weeks. The rest, almost the entire rest of the world, this will transition us into what the governor announced this past week on her agenda for the next couple of months. Almost Nolan, the rest of the civilized industrial world has a much better family leave policy than we have in America, and the governor wants to see that at the state level in Michigan.
But it's not free. And so it's
not free anywhere, is it?
No, but it's not free. It's going to raise taxes on business. It's going to raise taxes for everybody, or raise costs for everybody else. And you talk about, well, they have this in France and they have this in Germany and other places. They also have middle-class tax rates that average around 50%. What are we willing to accept to get all that wonderful stuff they have in those other places?
Well, I have little kids, and so when we talk about the cost of having little kids, a lot of people my age have waited much longer than our parents did because of the cost of having kids, because you can't manage it, and we're sandwiched in between taking care of older adults, right? I have an uncle who I'm helping to deal with, Korean War vet. We have so many more people who are trying to be caregivers who have decided to step away from the workforce. And this isn't like it was in the 40s or 50s or 60s where you had one parent who was staying at home. Both parents are now working. We need the time off so that people can participate. And we saw that during the pandemic, that people left the workforce because they had to go take care of a sick relative. And that's what we're trying to prevent. We're trying to make sure that women can continue to come back to the workforce because That's the difference here.
11 states have this paid family leave mandate that Whitmer is proposing. Only one of them, Colorado, is among the 10 fastest growing states in the country. I don't think this is a way to attract business. I don't think it's a way to attract jobs. Maybe you attract residents, but where are they going to work?
She made the case that this is exactly how you attract residents in this state.
Well, it hasn't worked for other states that have done it.
Is it
Again,
too expensive?
Every business is saying that the number one thing that they're looking for is talent. And when you talk about what people are looking for, they're looking for paid time off to take care of family and to do all these other kind of things. This is the number one driver for most working adults as they're looking at taking care of people.
Well, if that's the case, those businesses are free to offer it, and they're free to negotiate it with their employees. I don't know that we need the government starting another equivalent of the Unemployment Insurance Agency, which has been the most corrupt, mismanaged agency in government for decades, and that's the agency she says that she will model the operation after. That shouldn't be encouraging to anyone.
I mean, you can say that unemployment insurance has challenges, but it's
Challenges?
much better than the
$8.5 billion
before you had
wasted.
People who got laid off
That's not a
and then
challenge.
were immediately destitute, right? So that's the difference.
I mean, nobody's
saying
saying that they shouldn't pay unemployment benefits, but how many more of these payroll tax programs can you afford to layer on and not impact your business competitiveness? And I think this is going to hurt.
Stop working, right? We see a disproportionate share of folks after they have a child have to leave the workforce because they have an aging relative. They have to leave the workforce. We're losing millions of people from productivity across this country because we don't offer this thing.
If it were good, if it makes good business sense, business will offer it. I don't know
businesses are.
that
This is
way.
giving an
and that's the way.
opportunity for
And then
small
that's the way it
businesses.
should work.
And
It's
we're
not an
seeing it happen.
opportunity for small
I feel like I've
businesses.
been at the U.S. Open. This has been very good.
It's
I
a
like this. This is
disincentive
good.
for small businesses to add workers.
The governor is going to have to work quickly on this because, as we've noted on this program before, she could end up losing her Democratic majority come November. She did not take questions after talking about what she wants for this next couple of months, Nolan. And I think some of us thought maybe that's because of this weird email that has been brought to light over the water problems in Benton Harbor that was written with the Greek alphabet that some believe seemed to be designed to avoid public disclosure.
Well, I mean, she hasn't taken questions since March from the press. She has not answered questions publicly from the press since March, and I think it's part and parcel of the same thing. This is great disrespect for the electorate and the intelligence of the electorate to think we can encrypt something in Greek and you're not going to figure out what we're doing, with your money.
I got to get to a break, Adam. Unfortunately, he's going to have to get the last word today. You're owed it the next time you're on. We'll wrap things up for Flashpoint right after this. Just a couple seconds left. Nolan Finley and I are kind of wondering what Adam Ollier is going to do next.
I'll be back in October to tell you.
October. Okay. So you do get the last word. How about that? That's going to do it for us. Thanks so much for being here. Meet the Press coming up next. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time for Flashpoint.